Well, this week there was a sale, and it got my attention. Okay, so this sale wasn't at Old Navy, it wasn't at Kohl's, it wasn't at Target, it wasn't at a furniture store, it wasn't at any of those. It was on one of my favorite websites of all time, 47brand.com, which is where I buy all my hats. Okay, and I know that you guys know I love hats. If I could wear a hat on Sunday morning, I probably would. I'd probably preach in a hat if I could. But I love hats, and so I saw this sale, and it said not 10%, not 30, not 20%, but it said 30% off. So that got my attention. I was like, I don't really need any excuse to buy a new hat. If I see the word 30% off, I'm going to go buy one. And so I was like, how could I make this cheaper? And I was like, well, I could go in with someone else and I could split the shipping and it would be even cheaper for me. And so I texted my buddy, Josh. And I was like, hey, Josh, you want a new hat, bud? We can split it. You can get a hat. I can get a hat. We can split the shipping, and we could all save money. We all get a new hat. And he's like, yeah, bro. Okay, sure. And I was like, okay. And then I'm obsessed. And so I was sitting there, and I sent him like literally 10 different hats that I thought were really cool, that looked, that looked really cool. Different sports, different teams. I don't really care when it comes to the teams. But I sent him all these really cool hats, and he kept saying, whoa, this is dope. This is really cool. This is so awesome. This is so cool. He's like, oh, that one's so awesome. And I was like, okay, yeah. Which one do you want to do? I'll order it. We'll split the price. Like, which one do you want to do? And he's like, I don't know. And then he sent me the link to a hat that was just plain, like one of those like that has nothing on it. And I was like, dude, what's your problem? I was like, I just sent you like 10 really cool hats. You pick a lame hat like that has nothing on it. It was just blue or something like that. No logo. And I was like, why in the world did you do that? And he said, this is his actual text. I copied and pasted it from my phone. He said, I just can't wear a hat for a team I don't like. It's not in my nature. Okay, if you know anything about me, I've got a million hats, a million different teams. It doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't matter if I care. It doesn't matter if I care about the team or if I don't care about the team. But Josh said, if it's not the Lakers, I'm not going to wear it. I'm loyal to the Lakers. I will not do it. And I was like, okay, fine. And so he didn't end up getting a hat. I did. A different team. I got a different team. But as you guys know, I like sports, and I like baseball. And I'll tell you guys that I'm a Red Sox fan, but at the same time, I'm also an Angel fan. So I'm a little confused with that. But I started counting up my hats this week, and I looked at all the different teams I have, and there's zero loyalty when it comes to these teams. I have about like 3 or 4 Red Sox hats. I have 2 Angel hats. I have, this is when it starts getting random. I have a Mariners hat, I have a Padres hat, I have a Marlins hat, I have an Expos hat, and I just bought a Brewers hat this week. I don't know why. I don't care about any of those teams other than the Red Sox and the Angels, but I have a closet full of hats for all different teams. If you looked in my closet, you'd find no loyalty at all to any team. In Josh's closet, you might find loyalty to the Lakers, but my closet, there's zero loyalty. And when it comes to sports, loyalty, it actually matters. That's why we make fun of people that bandwagon all the time. Everyone that says, I'm a Warriors fan, it's because they probably became a Warriors fan last month because they just jumped on the bandwagon. But I was thinking about loyalty in sports, and I was thinking about how much more important loyalty is in other parts of our lives that actually matter. Like, think about this one, like the Christian life. How much more does loyalty matter? If it matters in sports, how much more should it matter in the Christian life? And I thought it's so important. God calls us to be faithful, and that's the next fruit of the Spirit that we're going to come to today. We talked about love, we talked about joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and we're on number 7. We're going to talk about faithfulness today and how important it is for us to be faithful and loyal, not only to God, but but today we're going to talk about how important it is for us to be faithful and loyal to others. See, our world is full of disloyalty. Our world is full of unfaithfulness. It's so much easier to be unfaithful in this world, isn't it? It's so much easier to be unfaithful in friendships. It's so much easier to, when your friends are boring or they hurt you in some way, you move on to a new set of friends. It's easier to lie to your friends. It's easier to gossip about your friends. It's easier to make fun of your friends. It's easier to break promises to your friends. But God calls us to something different. God calls us to discipline ourselves to faithfulness. He calls us to be loyal and dependable and honest to our friends. So I want you guys to turn open to the book of 1 Samuel. If you don't know where that is, turn to the Old Testament. You got Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. You got Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel. If you need to turn to the table of contents, you can. But 1 Samuel chapter 18, we're going to look at these 2 friends, Jonathan and David, and we're going to walk through actually quite a few chapters of 1 Samuel to see the kind of faithful friendship that they had for each other. Before we even start reading, I want us to define what faithfulness is, because this word is all over the New Testament. I found out that this word in the fruit of the Spirit, it is the word for faithfulness. It's mentioned 243 different times in the New Testament. That's a lot. It's all over it. It's defined as faith. It's defined as faithful. It's defined as faithfulness. It's defined as belief or assurance. And so in one sense, it's talking about the faithfulness that we have to God, the faithfulness, we being full of faith, people that are relying on God, people that are committed to God. But also today, I mean, if we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit, we're talking about relationships. So we're talking about being faithful in relationships, being reliable, being loyal, being trustworthy, being dependable in our relationships. We want to commit to faithfulness in our friendships and relationships. So guys, you can write that down for point number 1. Commit to faithfulness in friendships. It's so important that you are faithful to your friends in relationships, being loyal, trustworthy, dependable, reliable, honest. See, we see the ultimate human example of faithfulness in terms of marriage, right? So you think about the marriage covenant, bride and groom, they come together and they promise, they make a covenant, they say, I promise to never leave you. So death do us part. We will not separate. I'm forsaking all others. I'm not going to go around dating other people. I'm committed to you for the rest of my life. I'm not going anywhere else. And this ultimate display of commitment, of faithfulness, that's the ultimate human example of faithfulness, but we need to even exhibit that kind of faithfulness in our relationships with others who are not your spouse, because none of you are married. You have to be faithful to other people. And unfaithfulness is so annoying. If you've ever had anyone be unfaithful to you, you've ever had anything in your life be unfaithful or not dependable, it's got to, like, the ultimate example that I can think of is my car. And you guys know I talk about my car all the time, my Corolla S, okay, with aftermarket rims and aftermarket stereo. It's so cool. It's so awesome. Justin thinks it's really lame. I don't know why, but I think it's really cool. But my Corolla, it's not, I wouldn't call it faithful, okay? So not too long ago, I was stuck in a parking lot at Costco, and the car just wouldn't start, and I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't the battery. I was literally in the parking lot for like an hour and a half, and I could not figure out why my car didn't start. And that's the most helpless feeling in the world. I'm stuck at Costco. I don't want to be stuck at Costco. I'm stuck in the parking lot for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, because my car wouldn't start. It made me so angry and so mad, because like, this car, I paid thousands of dollars for this car. It should start. That feeling of injustice when unfaithfulness happens to you, and ultimately when it's relationships, it's even worse. But God calls us to be faithful, to be dependable, to be loyal. And ultimately, the ultimate example of that is God, God's faithfulness. God is the most faithful person, the most faithful thing we can even think of. Write down Lamentations chapter 3. Lamentations chapter 3, 21 through 24. Lamentations, like, where in the world is that? But I guarantee you know this verse. Lamentations chapter 3, verse 21, it says, I have this hope. The steadfast love of the Lord, it never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. And during this time, this guy Jeremiah, he's writing during this time when he's watching Jerusalem get ransacked by Babylon, their worst enemy. They're coming in, they're taking over, they're burning it on fire, they're taking everyone, kidnapping people. And he's sitting there watching all of this happen. Lamentation, it literally means to cry and to weep and to mourn, to lament. He's literally there in the worst possible scenario, and he's saying, God, great is your faithfulness. God is faithful in every situation. We have this unshakable faith in a God that is 100% faithful. He's never lied. He will never lie. He's never broken a promise. God is so faithful. And so each fruit of the Spirit, I mean, you think about any of the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, any of those things, our job is to reflect the perfect definition of love, the perfect definition of joy, of peace, of patience, of kindness that God exhibits. We want to exhibit that now in our lives. And in faithfulness, it's no different. It's something that we need to put into practice into our lives. And that's what these two guys here, hopefully that was a long time to give you time to turn to 1 Samuel. Hopefully you found it. You pulled it up on your phone. 1 Samuel chapter 18, we meet these two guys, David and Jonathan, who are faithful to each other. And this comes right on the heels. If you look at 1 Samuel 17, if you could read the title on that, this is one, maybe if not the most famous chapter in all the Bible. 1 Samuel chapter 17, it's David and Goliath, and you know that story. David, he goes in, he kills Goliath. He's a little small teenage boy, kills this huge warrior giant. And so right after this, David comes back. He's a hero. He comes back to the King Saul. And King Saul, he's got this son named Jonathan. And so that's where we pick it up right here. 1 Samuel chapter 18, we see David. It says, as soon as he finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan, Saul's son, was knit to the soul of David. And Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day, and he would not let him return to his father's house, so he accepted him now into his kingdom, into his family there. Verse 3, it says, then Jonathan, he made a covenant with David because he loved him as his soul. And Jonathan stripped himself of his robe that was on him and gave it to David, and his armor, and even his sword, and his bow, and his belt. You see, David and Jonathan here, they make the covenant. They make this commitment to each other. They're knit souls, it says in verse 1. They feel like they're the same person. They love each other so much. They're the bestest friends that you could have. And I hate that I even have to say this, but it's 2019, and our culture, the way that they read this verse is just, or this passage here, it's completely different. They'll say that they were homosexual. They loved each other in that way, but this is not what David and Jonathan are talking about. This is a different word. This is not what we're talking about at all. David had wife. Jonathan had a wife. This is not what they had, but they were knit souls. They were best friends. They were committed to each other. They were faithful to each other. The idea of knit souls, they were now connected as one. They were the word literally means to bind or to tie. So they're tied together. They're knit together. They're bound together. There's a sense of permanence that they're never going to leave. They've got these two people that care about the same thing. They both care about serving God and honoring God and glorifying God. And so now they're knit together because of that common bond, that deep desire to serve God. They both care about that so much that now they're connected to each other. And if you've grown up in the church, your parents go to this church or whatever, and you look at the difference between their friends and your friends. Do you see just the difference? Maybe your parents don't have a ton of friends, but let's just say that they do at this church. They've got these really, your parents probably at some point they were popular, believe it or not. They probably were sometime long ago. But if you look at their relationships, I think I can picture some of the parents here in this room, the relationship that they have with other parents in this room. And it's this tight-knit bond over not sports, not hobbies, not Instagram, but like a knit relationship over their commonality in Christ. They care about each other. They bond with each other. They hang out with each other not because they think each other is so cool, but they hang out with each other because they know we're bonded together for the purpose of serving God. We've got this chemistry, this knit soul aspect, united as one, teammates for a big cause, more important than themselves. They're together. Chemistry, it's important. That's what we're talking about here. Teammates for a big cause. You see, look at verse 3. It says Jonathan here, he made this covenant because he loved David as his own soul. Does that bring any verse to mind? Loving someone as your own soul, loving your neighbor as yourself, right? You've heard that before. I know you've heard that before. Mark chapter 12, verse 31. Jesus, he's talking, he says, the first greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Second commandment is this, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. He says there's no greater commandments than these two, loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, loving your neighbor as yourself. You see, the thing is, what we're trying to say here by loving your neighbor as yourself, or Jonathan saying he loved David as his own soul, I don't think you guys realize how much you care about yourself. Do you guys realize how much you care about yourself? Every time you're hungry, what do? You take care of yourself and you go grab some food. You go drive through Del Taco because you're so hungry for Del Taco, right? When you're cold, what do? You take care of yourself. You put a jacket on, you get warm. When you're sick, what do? You lay down, you rest, you drink a lot of water, you drink orange juice, you take your vitamins or whatever. You care about yourself so much, maybe more than you think. You think, oh, I'm a selfless person. I care about all these other people. But you care about yourself a whole lot. And the whole idea of loving your neighbor as yourself is you caring for other people as much or more than you care about your own self. You care about their well-being. And so Jonathan here, he loves David as his own soul. He cares about him as much as he even cares about himself. And then he makes the covenant. The idea here is they make this promise together that they're going to be faithful, a commitment to their friendship. I know that you probably don't make contracts or covenants with each other like this, like, hey, I'm going to be a covenant partner with you for the rest of my life. Maybe you probably didn't do that this week. Your best friend, you probably didn't make a covenant with them. But back in the ancient Near East, this was something that people would do. They would pledge their love to each other. They'd say, I'm bound to you. I mutually promise, both of the people, they promise to have this perpetual friendship that will last for the rest of their life. It's a lifetime contract. It's like what Nike has done with 3 people. Did you know that 3 people in the world have lifetime contracts with Nike? Michael Jordan, that one's an obvious. He has, his whole brand is with the Nike. LeBron James and Ronaldo. Those 3 people, they have contracts that run out when they die. Like most people, they sign a contract for like 3 years or 4 years to wear Nike or Adidas or whatever. But LeBron, Ronaldo, and Michael Jordan, they've said, I will wear Nike for the rest of my life. I'm not going to wear Adidas. I'm not going to wear Puma. I'm going to wear Nike. And they're making millions. Ronaldo and LeBron are both making $1 billion over the course of their life, if you can even fathom that number. But they make these lifetime contracts. And that's kind of the idea of what Jonathan and David are doing here. They're making a lifetime contract, a covenant that I'm going to be your friend. I'm going to be faithful to you. And so he does that by, Jonathan, he confirms that covenant by giving him stuff, by giving him his robe, giving him his armor, his sword, his bow and his belt. He gives him all this stuff, confirming that he really does care about him, confirming that I care about you and I will care about you and I'm going to be faithful to you. You see, biblical friendships, maybe they don't all come with a covenant necessarily, but they come with a sense of faithfulness and commitment. And so that's the kind of sacrificial service and love and care and faithfulness that we should have for others. I bring you to this passage all the time, but Philippians chapter 2, verses 3 and 4 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others as more significant than yourselves. Let each of you not look only to your own interest, but also to the interest of others. This is what God has called you to do when it comes to your relationships. Look out for the interests of others. Care for them more than you care about yourself, counting them as more significant than yourself. You're committed to do that and be faithful with that promise. It's a commitment of sacrifice, a commitment of faithfulness. And I don't know what your friendships look like. Maybe your friendships are fickle. You have not faithful, but fickle. And you've got friends for this time of your life, and then you move on, and you care about these friends, and you've got these friends because they're on your soccer team. You got these friends because they go to school with you or whatever. You have all these different sets of friends, and I hate to say this, but you're probably not going to keep in contact with your high school friends or your junior high friends or whatever. You're probably, I can't think of one person other than my wife who I keep in contact with from my high school that I went to high school with. I guess my brother went to my high school. I still, text him every once in a while. But that's kind of a built-in faithful commitment, I guess. I didn't choose that. I was born to be committed to him, I guess. But I don't know what your friendships look like. They look seasonal. You've got friends here. You've got friends there. It doesn't really matter. It's not really deep. You got a rotation of friends. But this is real biblical friendship. It goes deeper than soccer teams or Instagram or school friends or neighborhood friends. But it's this deep, faithful commitment. Maybe right now you treat your friendships by putting on a face or putting on a mask, or maybe you lie to your friends a lot, or maybe you are unfaithful to your friends, you gossip about them. But real faithful friends are saying, I'm committed to you for the rest of your life, and I care about you. Because guess what? We care about the same thing. David and Jonathan, what do they both care about? They both cared about serving God and honoring God as their first priority, and they bonded over that. They were faithful. They said, I'm going to stay in contact. I'm going to stay caring for you. See, my friends from college are completely different. My friends from high school, I didn't really have really close Christian friends, but in college I did, and I still text those guys literally every single day. We still share prayer requests. We still share the concerns of our life. We still talk about those things because we bond on a deeper level than Instagram or sports or hobbies or neighborhoods. But we've got a commitment to each other because we care about God. Maybe you're sitting here and you're like, okay, well, yeah, I'm not a committed friend. I've betrayed friends in the past. I've gossiped about friends in the past. Well, if you have, well, it's not too late to commit to faithfulness again. You guys remember the story of Peter, right? What did Peter do? Peter betrayed Christ all the way up to his crucifixion. He was sitting there in this around a fireplace, and this servant girl walked up to him and said, hey, you're one of Jesus' followers. And he said, no, I'm not. I promise. I swear, I'm not. He swore that he didn't know Jesus at all. He betrayed him. But what did he do after? Jesus, he died on the cross. He rose again. And in John chapter 21, Jesus, he comes back. He gets some breakfast with his disciples. He goes out. They're fishing. And he tells Peter, hey, you got to commit to faithfulness again. He says, tend my sheep, feed my lambs. Be a committed follower of me. And what did Peter do for the rest of his life? He died because he followed Christ. He committed to faithfulness. And so if you betrayed a friend, guess what? Okay, that's not good, but you just get back up and commit to faithfulness. Commit to faithfulness. That's what Jonathan did. That's what David did in 1 Samuel chapter 18. And then I want to keep going in this story. I don't want to just stop there in 1 Samuel 18. If you flip over the page to 19, a couple things happen in verse 18. Saul gets really angry at David. He's jealous. Then he tries to pull a fast one on him, and he says, I want you to go out and be the leader of my military. So he's hoping that maybe he'll go out there and die in the military. And then he gives him his daughter, Saul, one of his daughters, for marriage. So David, he marries this daughter of Saul's, because Saul wants him distracted. He wants him to go out into the battle and die. He thought if he gave his daughter, he would look good. Once David dies, he would look like a good guy because he gave him his daughter in marriage. But you look down at chapter 19. Look at verse 4. We see Jonathan. He's still committed to David, even though his dad wants to kill David, his best friend. His dad wants to kill his best friend. But at verse 4, Jonathan, he goes before his dad. He spoke well of David to Saul his father and said, let not the king sin against his servant David, because he's not sinned against you, because his deeds have been brought to you. For he took his life in his hand when he struck down the Philistine, referring to when he went and fought Goliath. And the Lord, he worked a great salvation for all of Israel. He's reminding Saul of all the great things that David did. He said, you saw it and you rejoiced. Then will you sin against innocent blood by killing David without cause? And Saul, he listened to the voice of Jonathan, and Saul swore, as the Lord lives, he shall not be put to death. And then Jonathan, he called David, and David reported all these things to David. So what Jonathan does here is he's committed to David with his words. And I think that's something that's so important for us to think about. We need to be faithful with our words when we're in front of that person, when we're behind their back. I want us to be faithful friend with your words. Write that down for point number 2. Be a faithful friend with your words. You see, Jonathan here, he went to bat for David. His dad wanted to kill his best friend, and he said, don't do that. Don't kill my best friend. Look at all the great things he's done. He put his neck on the line. He was like a attorney. A lawyer. What does a lawyer do? Karina and I were watching a show last night that had a lawyer in it, and he went and he tried to defend the lawyer. She tried to defend her person, and so she went to bat. She put her neck on the line so that this guy could go free. She risked herself to go to bat or argue on behalf of someone else, and that's what Jonathan does here. He's an attorney, if you will, not literally, but he puts his neck on the line for David. He's consistent with his words. Look back at verse 4 there. Jonathan, he spoke well of David to Saul, his father. He spoke well of David. I love that. He doesn't just defend him, but he speaks well of him. He doesn't talk bad things about David. He's faithful to David with his words. He reminded Saul of all the good qualities. I think it's convicting for us to look at that verse. See, Jonathan, when he could have slandered David, he spoke well of David, even if it meant he was going to maybe get made fun of by his dad or maybe get disagreed with by his dad, but he spoke well of David when he was behind his back. How do you talk about your friends when you're behind their back? Do you talk well of them? Do you defend them? Do you say good things about them? Do you talk them up? Or is that when you got the chance to make fun of them? You got the chance to gossip about them. You got the chance to tell someone else the bad things that they did to me. Look at how bad they are. Is that how you treat your friends? It's so convicting. Write down Matthew chapter 12, verse 34 through 37. Matthew 12, 34 through 37. This verse is so convicting. I know you know it, but here it is. For out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. The good person out of the good treasure brings forth good, but the evil person out of the evil treasure brings forth evil. And as I thought about this verse here in the context of our sermon here today, I thought about the kind of friend that you are behind someone's back is truly the kind of friend that you are. Because what you say about your friend behind their back, it's a reflection of really your heart. It's a reflection of how you really care about that person. So if you slander them, if you gossip them, if you drag their name through the mud, then really what you're saying is that's the kind of friend that I am. I don't really care about them or love them as much as maybe I try to say that I do. The kind of friend that you are behind their back is the kind of friend that you probably really are. That's so convicting. What you say behind their back, it's a reflection of your heart. So our goal has to, instead of being tearing people down, but be like Jonathan here and speak well of our friends behind their back. Our goal needs to be building them up. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only such as good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. It says, don't let corrupting talk, don't make fun of, don't gossip, don't slander, but instead of that, build up. So instead of doing what you want to do by being unfaithful to your friend with your words, you choose to do the opposite. You say, I'm going to be faithful by talking them up, by speaking the words that are good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. Our goal is to build up instead of tear down. I think part of the reason that we do that, I was asking myself that question this week. Why do we gossip? Why do we make fun of people behind their back? Why do we slander? Why do we say those things, those hurtful things behind people's back? And I think it's because we care about the opinion of others. We're chameleons. You know, chameleon, the animal, the lizard thing that, like, if it's in a yellow place, it'll turn yellow. If it's blue, it'll turn blue. You know, you see them in those like commercials and stuff like that. Because I think we're like chameleons. When we're around these people that don't like that person, we're just going to act like we don't like that person. And then when we're around someone that does, we're going to act like them and to fit in, to be accepted, to be, cool or whatever. That's so wrong to seek the approval of man. It's a people pleasing. Instead of pleasing God, pleasing man. Galatians 1:10 says, Paul, he's talking about himself. He says, for am I trying to seek the approval of man or of God? If I were trying to please man, I would not even be a servant of Christ. He's saying, Christianity, I live for an audience of one. I don't live for people anymore. I'm not a chameleon. I don't act this way around this person, act this way around that person, act that way around those people to fit in with all those different crowds. It comes down to us caring about what God thinks over caring about what people think. And I think that's the reason, part of the reason why we slander other people, why we gossip about other people, because it makes us feel better. It makes us feel accepted. You know what I'm talking about, right? When you've got a friend that does something stupid and you tell someone else, you want them to be like, yeah, that person's really stupid. And you hype them up like, yeah, that person's not really a good person. Or they really did that. That was so mean. That was so bad. We try to get that acceptance. And you know that feeling. You kind of like puff your chest up like, oh, yeah. Like they don't like him too. Like, I don't know. It's so wrong. It's so messed up. Let no corrupting talk come out of your mouth, but only good for building up as fits the occasion. That's the kind of person, that's the kind of faithful friend that we need to be. We need to be a faithful friend with our words, just like Jonathan was. Go to bat for other people, not slander them behind their back. That's how we can be faithful. We can be faithful, we can be loyal. But also another aspect, like I mentioned before, of faithfulness is the idea of trustworthiness. You're honest. You're loyal. Write that down for point number 3. Be a trustworthy friend. When you're done with that, I want you to turn over couple more chapters to the right. Keep going on in this story here to 1 Samuel chapter 20. We're going to look at verse 12 through 17. But even more goes on. Saul, he makes that promise like we just read that he was not going to kill David. But now Saul, he's still trying to kill David. And he tries to kill him, and David gets away in chapter 19. And then Saul, he tries to formulate this plan to kill David. And Jonathan here, he warns David of the danger that's about to come. 1 Samuel chapter 20. Look at verse 12 here with me. Remember, they're still in this covenant. Jonathan and David, they're still in this covenant together. And then Jonathan, he comes to David. He warns him of this danger. And he says to David, the Lord, the God of Israel, be my witness when I have sounded out my father tomorrow. So what he's going to do, he makes this plan. I'm going to go figure out if my dad's going to try to kill you. He makes this plan. He says, about this time tomorrow or on the third day, behold, if he is well disposed toward David, shall I not send and disclose it to you? I'll let you know if my dad's going to come try to kill you. But if it should please my father to do you harm, the Lord do so to Jonathan, talking about himself, and more also if I do not disclose it to you and send you away that you may go in safety. What Jonathan is trying to say here is he's saying, I promise you that whatever's going to happen, I'm going to go figure out if my dad wants to kill you or not. And I'm going to let you know because I care about you. And if I don't let you know, I hope that I suffer harm because I wasn't honest to you. He's saying, I want to be a trustworthy person. I'm going to follow through on my promise. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to make a promise and ultimately not fulfill it. If you flip down to the end of that chapter, it's such an interesting story. He puts this whole plan together. He figures out if his dad's going to kill him. After a couple days, he realizes, yes, his dad still wants to kill David. Then he does this little thing he has this guy go and shoot these arrows either next to him or past him. And if it's past him, he does trying to kill him, but he has this whole plan. It's really interesting. If you wanted to read it later today, you could. We see down at the end, he lets him know that Jonathan finds out that Saul does want to kill him. And at the bottom here, they come together. Verse 41, it says, as soon as the boy had gone, after he'd done his little trick, basically to tell David what was going to happen, David rose from beside the stone where he was hiding. He fell on his face and bowed 3 times. And they kissed each other, and they wept with one another, David weeping the most. And Jonathan said to David, go in peace, because we have sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall be between you and me, and between my offspring and your offspring. And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city. So what Jonathan, he follows through on his promise that he makes to David. He lets him know that his dad wants to kill David. He cares about his friend. I thought about us when I was reading this. I thought, how trustworthy are we? When we make a promise to someone, are you someone that makes a promise and doesn't fulfill it? Are you someone that actually follows through on your promises? Do you lie to your friends? Do you lie to your friends or your parents for that matter? Real Christians are defined by trustworthiness, by honesty, by truthfulness. We memorized at Revival, Revelation 21, verse 8. If you guys still remember that big long list. Remember, we try to remember the order of all the things, but Revelation chapter 21, verse 8 says, but as for the cowardly, the faithless, the detestable, as for the murderers, the sexually immoral, the sorcerers, idolaters, and the last one, all liars, their portion will be in the lake that burns with fire and sulfur, which is the second death. The future for liars is hell, is what God says. And if you right now are defined as a liar, you're someone that lies to your friends, breaks covenants with your friends, break promises to your friends, then by definition, that's a liar, right? Well, Revelation 21, verse 8 says what's going to happen, and it's not good. Write down Proverbs 12, verse 22. Proverbs 12, verse 22 says, lying lips are an abomination to the Lord. He hates them, but those who act faithfully are his delight. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, but those who act faithfully are his delight. God blesses faithfulness. He hates lying. So if you lie to your friends, if you break those promises, if you can't be counted on, it ultimately hurts you in the long run. It hurts the other person. I don't know if you've ever been lied to before. I mean, it's the worst. When you find out someone has lied to you, has that happened to you before? I had a boss out of school tell me that if I worked for him and I was a good employee, that he would pay for my school, and he would once I got married, pay for my wife's school and tuition, this is thousands of dollars. I had a boss tell me that he would do that, And at first I believed him. And after talking to my dad, he's like, no, you don't believe that. There's no way in the world. And guess what? It didn't happen. He didn't follow through on that promise. It made me so angry when someone lied to me about something that I really cared about. He was unfaithful. He was untruthful. He was dishonest. And it hurt. So think about being on the receiving end. Lying lips are an abomination to the Lord, a.k.a. you're going to get punished for lying, but also you hurt someone really bad. God cares about us being trustworthy. He's a trustworthy God. We can't be defined as liars. We can't even be known as people that stretch the truth or sugarcoating. I don't know if you ever had a friend. I had a friend in college. We call him Willy Wonka. In my phone, his name is literally Willy Wonka, because he would just sugarcoat everything. Like you couldn't shoot it straight with this guy. Like he would just say something extremely outrageous, and then once you actually like realize what happened, you were like, why did you even say that in the first place? Because that was not honest in the first place. Because he just stretches the truth. And it's not fun. Like the boy who cried wolf, what happens? The boy who cried wolf, he does it time and time again. What happens? Eventually no one believes him. We can't be those kinds of people. We can't stretch the truth. We can't be liars. We have to be trustworthy friends. Strive to embody trustworthiness, just like David did with Jonathan. He came through on his promise. He made a covenant. He said, I'm not going to break this, and he doesn't break it. We need to strive to embody this trustworthiness just like David, or just like Jonathan does with David. This is right here, what you just read in 1 Samuel 20. It's the second to last conversation that David and Jonathan ever had, or at least we have in the Bible. Maybe they did somewhere else, not recorded in the Bible, but this is the second to last one. But I thought it would be nice for us to finish at their last one, their last meeting, their last conversation together. So flip over to 1 Samuel chapter 23, a couple more pages to the right. More stuff happens. Saul, he's on this manhunt for David. He's trying to kill David. David, chapter 21, he gets some food from the temple. He flees, he hides. Saul, he comes and kills those people that gave him the free food. Chapter 22, he hides in a cave, chapter 22. Chapter 23, we see David and Jonathan, they meet for the last time. Look at chapter 23, verse 15. David here, he realizes that Saul had come out to seek his life, come out to kill him. And David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horesh. And Jonathan, Saul's son, he rose up and he went to David at Horesh, strengthening his hand in God. And he said to him, do not fear, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. You shall be the king over Israel, and I shall be next to you. Saul, my father, knows this already. And the two of them made a covenant before the Lord. And David remained at Horesh, and Jonathan went home. This is the last conversation that we have recorded in Scripture with David and Jonathan. And we see Jonathan, he goes out his way. Verse 16, he rose up. He went to go find David in this place called Horesh. Why? To strengthen his hand in God. He encouraged him. That's the kind of friend that we need to be. That's the kind of faithful friend that we need to be. Write that down for point number 4. Be an encouraging friend. That's another aspect of faithfulness. You being faithful is you committing to someone else's good. You committing to look out for the interests of other people. Caring about them. Saying, I'm not going to give up. One aspect of that is being a faithful encourager, a committed encourager. Goes to strengthen his hand in God. I love that. That's the purpose of encouragement. It's to strengthen someone else's hand in God. I think there's a couple little tips we can take here from this text. 3 tips about how to encourage other people. And the first thing, you look at verse 16, you see that Jonathan has to get up, he has to leave and go to Horesh to go meet David. It takes sacrifice for him. So that's the first thing. We need to understand that the encouragement takes sacrifice. Sometimes we have to go out of our way. I don't know if you ever had you try to encourage someone. It's kind of awkward, isn't it? Like it's much easier to make fun of someone or push someone down or, make them laugh or something like that. That's so much easier than to go over and say like, hey, I really appreciate what you did back there. Or, hey, man, like, I'm so glad that you're reading your Bible. I pray that you would do that more. I pray that you'd be encouraged by what you've been reading. Or, what did you think about the sermon? Or talking about, I don't know, the things of God. That's the idea of encouragement. It takes sacrifice. It's awkward to do that. But Jonathan here, he goes out of his way. He leaves wherever he is, and he goes and he finds David so that he can do this. Next thing that we realize is the goal of encouragement is to strengthen someone else's hand in God. Exactly what this text says in verse 16. Jonathan, his goal is to strengthen David. That's the whole idea of encouragement. It's coming alongside someone to pick them up, to push them on. When someone is down, you come and you bring them up. The last thing here, what he does in verse 17, David, he says, don't fear. He says, for the hand of Saul, my father, shall not find you. He reminds him that he's going to be the king over Israel. God made a promise to David that he was going to be the king over Israel. So Jonathan here, he's saying, remember what God has promised. You will be the king. You will not die right now. So the third aspect is we need to comfort and reassure others of the faithfulness of God. We need to remind them of the promises that God made. You think any situation, any terrible situation in this life, whether it's, disease or natural disaster, or any bad thing that can happen to you, your parents lose their job or you lose your house or something like that, any bad thing that happens, you can always remember the faithfulness of God is still active. His mercies are new every morning. Lamentations 3. His mercies are new every morning. Great is his faithfulness. And encouraging is often just us reminding other people of the promises that God has already made. See, when someone's down, we got to remind them of the truths that they already know. We need to be like Jonathan. We need to be encouragers. If you guys remember back when we were studying the book of Colossians chapter 4, we met all those friends of Paul that he listed, Aristarchus and Justus and Mark and Epaphras and all these other guys. We talked about how these guys came alongside Paul. Remember this guy Aristarchus? It said he was a fellow prisoner of Paul. He was this guy who came in to the jail cell with Paul. He wasn't a prisoner. He wasn't a convict, but he went to go be in jail with Paul to be his fellow prisoner, to encourage him, to push him, to strengthen him. The guy Epaphras, he was this guy who committed to pray for Paul. That's another aspect of encouragement, praying for other people. Encouragement, literally the Greek word means to come alongside. Parakaleo. Para alongside of kaleo, called alongside someone. Your goal is to come alongside to support them. To be a rock, a resting place, an encouragement, a strengthen. So hopefully that's something that you can do this week. I want you to think practically right now. What can I do this week? What can I actually do? What can I actually say? What text can I actually send? What call could I actually do for someone else to encourage them, to strengthen them, to communicate a sense of faithfulness to them? Jonathan, what he's saying here by running out to Paul and by reminding him of the promises of God, what he's doing, he's saying, I care about you. I still care about you. I made a covenant to you. I committed to be faithful to you, and I'm still going to be faithful to you. I'm still going to strengthen you. I'm still going to come alongside you. See, all these things here, it's really hard. It's hard to be faithful. It's hard to be faithful in friendships. It's hard to be faithful with our words. It's hard to be trustworthy. It's hard to be encouraging. All of those things are hard. They take discipline for us to do, to embody these things. It's so much easier to have relationships that are founded on sports or Instagram or neighbors or, whatever, hobbies. It's so much easier to do that. It's so much easier to make fun of people. It's so much easier to mock them. It's so much easier to lie to them. It's so much easier to be dishonest or disloyal to your friends. All of those things are easier, but God calls us to fight for faithfulness with our words, being trustworthy with our words, and also encouraging other people. You see, we can't be disloyal people. You can't look like my closet. You can't have all these different teams and all these different cares. It's a disloyal closet that I have of hats. You want to be more like Josh and say, Lakers are nothing. I'm not nothing else. I'm going to be faithful to this team because I care about this one team. I'm not going to waver. I'm not going to like the Clippers. I'm not going to like, whoever. I'm going to like this one team. I'm going to stay faithful and loyal to this one team. That's the kind of friendships that you need to have. Being loyal, being faithful, being honest, being trustworthy. If it's important in sports, then how much more important is it for our Christian life and for our friendships? So hopefully that's something that we can do this week. It's convicting. I know it's hard. All of these things are hard. It's hard for me to stand up here and preach these things because it means I have to do them too. It's really hard. But we got to do them because we're called to faithfulness. Put on love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, and faithfulness. Hopefully that's something that you can start doing here this week, even starting today. So if you would bow your heads right now, let's pray together. Let's talk to God. God, we are so thankful for the truth that you are faithful. We are so thankful that your mercies are new every morning, and we can sing out, great is your faithfulness. God, what a comforting truth that is, that you are a God that will not lie, that will stay true to his promises. God, I pray that you would help us. Please help us to do the same in our friendships and our relationships. God, sin is so much easier to do. It is so much more fun to do. But God, I pray that you would help us fight and discipline ourselves to be faithful with our words when we're either in front of someone, encouraging them, or when we're behind them. God, I pray that you would keep us from slander and from gossip. God, I pray that you would also help us be trustworthy and not lie. God, you hate liars, but you love faithfulness. God, please help us be that this week. Be our strength. We know that you are faithful. Please help us now this week be faithful. In Jesus' name, amen.